Fear Street Prom Queen is a complete disaster, and that's really disappointing to me because the original Fear Street trilogy I thought was a fun and charming series that modernized the slasher genre in a fresh and creative way. But Prom Queen does none of that. This is a totally regressive movie that rehashes all of the worst cliches and stereotypes that the slasher genre can lean on, and ultimately this movie falls flat on its face. I finally watched this last night after putting it off because of all the bad reviews, and I am still genuinely baffled by how much the quality has dropped from the previous three movies. This is one of the most blatant examples of 80s nostalgia bait that I have ever seen. And I'm honestly not even one of the people who's tired of the 80s nostalgia movies. I actually still like it whenever it's done right. I think Totally Killer was a good recent example of this, but Fear Street Prom Queen is shameless. Like, this movie doesn't even try to feel like the 80s, outside of the excessive soundtrack that honestly feels like it fills half the runtime. There's at least 15 needle drops in this movie, and none of them are warranted. None of them feel earned. They don't lead to anything exciting or special. It's just playing a popular song for the sake of playing a popular song. And I think the first trilogy, while yes, it is also guilty of the nostalgia bait at parts, to me it got a lot better as the series went on. Like, that first movie kind of started you off on the wrong foot in the first 15 to 20 minutes, and I think it gets a bad rep because of that, because after the opening kill, when we're being introduced to our main characters for the next 15 to 20 minutes, Fear Street 94 does get a little excessive. It's a bit obnoxious with the nostalgia. The 90s stuff is dialed all the way up. We get like 3 needle drops back to back to back, which is absolutely insane. And the characters themselves are all abrasively introduced. They're all hemming it up just a little too much, and overall it just makes for an obnoxious start to the movie. But once 1994 finally settles down and gets itself going, basically once they find the witch's bones, this first Fear Street movie, to me, finds a really nice groove and rides that through the rest of the trilogy. All the characters that we get are enjoyable to follow. I thought their interactions together were great. There's comedy, there's drama, there's tension. We get some awesome kills and spooky scenes throughout. I enjoyed all the time that I spent just hanging out with these characters, and I wanted to stay on this thrill ride with them throughout the entire trilogy. None of that charm is present in Prom Queen whatsoever. Not even for a second does this movie replicate the heart or the mystery of the first 3 movies. None of the characters are likable. There's nothing in this plot that made me feel invested. I could not care less who won Prom Queen, and I also couldn't understand why our main character even cared about winning Prom Queen either. There's no motivations that make any sense. There's nothing driving the plot forward. None of it adds up whatsoever. And apparently, in the Fear Street book that this movie was adapted from, there is a scholarship attached to the Prom Queen. So boom, there's incentive for your main character right there. And then you'd have, interesting class stuff to work with. This is what the previous films touched on, but the writers of this movie just decided, nah, we're good. That's not interesting, I guess. Character development, that's not the kind of movie we're making here, buddy. So I don't mean any disrespect to the creators of this, but every decision that they made on screen was baffling to me. They apparently also included contemporary slang in this movie because they didn't want modern audiences to feel alienated. They wanted the younger generation to relate to it. And like, dog, it's an 80s time period movie. Don't make an 80s movie if you want it to feel like 2025. No one is forcing you to make an 80s throwback movie. Maybe Netflix executives did, but either way, you didn't have to use the modern slang. And also, the modern dialogue that they use, it's not even modern, okay? The characters at one point, actually one character in literally back-to-back scenes, like, I'm not even kidding you, it's 15 seconds apart, this character uses the word epic. Epic. Like, no one has used that word unironically since 2013, first off. And second, again, why set the movie in the 80s in the first place if you want the characters to feel modern? This is just, everything about this movie feels like Netflix was trying to make the most stereotypical Netflix original slot movie they could possibly make. Because again, you get the 80s nostalgia, which is just shamelessly forced into the movie at every turn. But then they're also trying to appeal to younger audiences, so you use the modern dialogue. None of the characters feel like they're actually from the 80s. The dialogue itself is so heavy-handed and repetitive that it makes for one of the most frustrating movie watches I've had in a very long time, honestly. The characters, they repeat the same dialogue in 25 different ways to fill this runtime and remind people what's going on because, and I'm sure many people have seen this report before, but but Netflix executives basically they like to ensure that the characters in their shows and their original movies say things out loud in a very direct and heavy-handed manner because they know that most of the people who are watching are probably just scrolling through their phones or doing laundry or not really paying attention to the movie. So you have to beat people over the head with this repetitive dialogue that's very on the nose to make sure that everyone's brought up to speed. And I'm sorry, that is just completely absurd to me. If you can't pay attention to a 90-minute movie, then that's your problem. All right, don't water down the movie to appeal to those people who aren't paying attention anyways, because I'm actually paying attention and I feel like I'm being punished for paying attention. I should have just been on my phone during this movie because nothing required that much brain power apparently. And the writing in this movie, like I said, obviously falls victim to this trend because, oh my god, I think 90% of the dialogue in Prom Queen is either talking about her mom allegedly murdering her dad or this empty motivation for her wanting to be the prom queen, which again doesn't make any sense. It's never explained. It's just all of it is so forced. I stopped at the 20-minute mark of this movie just to get a sense for how much time had gone by, and the characters had talked about her mom allegedly killing her dad 4 separate times already by the 20-minute mark, like separate scenes of that same exact backstory being explained to you in a very direct manner basically every 5 minutes. And so again, I feel like I should have just been on my phone this entire time because everything about this movie is bland and lifeless. The character interactions are awkward. The cinematography is completely uninspired. I don't even know. I don't think they set the camera up for any of these scenes. I think they just put it wherever they wanted to and started filming. The colors suck. The soundtrack is completely misused. The characters, they all suck too. They're all cardboard cutouts of different 80s stereotypes. There's no development whatsoever. And just when you thought this movie couldn't get worse, just when you thought I'm really going off and trashing this movie, we get the worst and most cringy dance-off moment that I've ever seen. Like literally a dance-off between the two main prom queens, and it's horrible. It's just as bad as you could imagine. It's, with all due respect to the people who worked on this movie, I cannot understand how this thing was released in this state. At no point did someone look around and say, you know what? This isn't working. Nothing we're doing right now is working. Let's try to fix something or adjust. And maybe the script and the direction, there was nothing to work with to begin with. And like, honestly, I don't even know if you could have fixed this thing because the script and the direction have to be the biggest limitations here. There's nothing for anyone to work with. I don't know where you could have even salvaged this movie or saved it. It probably just needed an entirely different creative team from the beginning because even the kills, even the killer himself is generic and bland. If you're gonna make a shitty slasher movie where there's no character development and nothing interesting going on, you at least have to deliver some kills. And this movie, in all honesty, it made me appreciate really good stunt work and good stunt performers because whoever was behind the mask as the killer, they were also garbage. I'm sorry, I know I'm being very negative, but whoever was behind the mask felt so awkward and it felt like they were trying so hard to be scary. They walked and did this exaggerated heavy breathing thing in such a cringy way. It actually reminded me of, like, you know, when you see scare actors outside of haunted houses that are running around with a chainsaw and stuff. That's how the killer in this movie was walking around, and it just did not work. It felt very amateur. The kills themselves, look, I'll say there's 2 kills in this movie that actually did get a laugh out of me. First is the paper cutter where the guy loses both of his hands, then he's trying to open the door with his little nubs. That was good. I'll give you credit there. And then the guy who gets his head knocked clean off on the dance floor. I think that effect just took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it to be so cartoonish, so that got a good laugh out of me. But everything else about this movie is awful, man. There are no other kills that stand out. They're the most generic, just straightforward stabbings you've ever seen in a slasher movie. And again, I just can't comprehend how this movie fell so drastically from the other ones. In the other movies, again, outside of those first 20 to 25 minutes in the first movie, I actually thought the soundtrack was handled pretty well. I thought every needle drop moment that we get fit the movie to a degree, or it would prelude something interesting or memorable that was about to happen. None of that is here in Prom Queen. Again, there's nothing remotely close to the best kills of the first 3 movies. And to talk spoilers for a second, trust me, you're not going to be missing anything here. The motivations of the 3 killers, once it's revealed, it is not only entirely predictable, but it also makes no sense to me because the popular girl and her parents, they're the killers, right? It's revealed that the 2 parents and the popular girl, they're killing off the other prom queen contestants so that Tiffany, she can win the prom queen. But the problem is, first off, this is such a juvenile and stupid motivation for the killers. It's so entirely predictable. No one cares that much about prom queen to begin with. It's a very dumb premise to start. But even worse, Tiffany was already the favorite to win the prom queen. I guess you have the first girl who gets murdered. She was rumored to potentially be the favorite, if I remember that correctly. But after her, it was just Tiffany. And so why she was already gonna win? Why even bother killing everyone else and doing this whole convoluted plot? The whole thing is stupid. None of it makes sense. I just don't understand it, but I don't think it's exactly highbrow. And obviously, like, look, Lori ends up stealing prom queen at the last second because of that stupid dance battle. But before that, like I said, they had already killed like 4 people, and it just feels totally unnecessary because Tiffany was probably going to win before all that. And so again, the killers, their plan makes no sense. They also have no sense of preservation or like any clever attempt at trying to get away with these murders. The dad at the end of the movie just charges straight into the prom and unmasks himself in front of everybody. And then after that, in the end, what was their plan? Just to stab Lori in their own home and then hide the body or like claim self-defense? What was the plan there? None of it made sense. And look, I don't need my slasher movie to be very smart. I don't need it to fit into any perfect logical box, but it can't be this dumb. Okay, not in 2025. You can't make a slasher movie that is this dumb. I think modern audiences have moved on past that, and I think most contemporary slashers that have been well received recently all understand that being campy and cheesy does not give you an excuse to be low effort. You still have to deliver on some things for this to be enjoyable. And that's what the previous Fear Street movies did so well right away from the start. And again, I just think overall, entering this movie, whoever was creating it just thought that the bar was much lower than it actually was. Netflix thought that they have a successful IP, they could just throw some 80s dressing on top of it, make a generic slasher movie for as low of a budget as possible, as low effort, and they probably do just good enough to make a quick buck. And that's what this entire movie felt like. There's no heart, there's no intention or craft. It's all, how do we capitalize on this IP and cash out for one more big payday? And that's disappointing as hell because, like I said, the original trilogy sets itself up to be such a promising franchise. Maybe we'll get this franchise back on track with the next entry if there ever is another one. I think if it were up to me, if it were up to me, first off, none of the people from this movie are coming back, with all due respect. Like, none of the, I don't even want the boom operator coming back for this, okay? Completely new team in charge of this. That's the first step. The second step is we got to get back to making this feel like Fear Street. All right, give me the conflict between the two cities. Let's make the scale of this feel a little larger. Let's widen our scope a bit. It felt like there were 25 people at the prom, and 6 of them were running for prom queen. It felt so small scale and empty. So we got to expand this world again. Give me a group of characters that are navigating these two cities and make the setting feel like a crucial part of the story again, because that was at the core of the first 3 movies. As for the time period, I think, look, you either have to go back and tell a story from maybe the 50s or the 60s, or you just make this a contemporary movie and tell a story set in the modern day. I'm sure you can adapt any of those books to fit into today's world. And if you move away from the shameless nostalgia bait, even if it's just for one movie, I think that'll probably win back some good faith from the audience and make people trust that you're actually trying to deliver something here. Because right now, I'm just disappointed as hell. And I still love the other ones, but it is what it is. Right now, the Fear Street franchise is very much up in the air. I don't know what to expect moving forward. And hey, by the way, last thing, if you like this movie, hell, if you even love this movie, don't let me talk you down from it, all right? Own it. Be glad if you liked it, all right? I'm happy that you did. I don't want to feel like I'm trashing anyone's favorite movie here, but that's all I have for my review. This was just my opinion, so thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like and hit the subscribe button, and I'll have more videos coming soon.